Content warning: this episode contains an in-depth discussion on the topic of sexual assault. Hello and welcome to Post-Burnout.com interviews. Post-Burnout.com is a culture website dedicated to venerating burnt-out artists the world over. My name is Aaron Kavanagh and I'm the website's founder and editor-in-chief. This is our website's podcast where we publish the full interviews from our site's articles and sometimes release exclusive episodes. In this edition of Post-Burnout.com interviews, Donegal singer-songwriter Seán Molloy discusses his debut single It's Not Your Fault, his background as a musician, why he started this solo venture, working with producer Ross Tones on the song, the importance of emphasising consent in sexual education, donating the proceeds of the single to the Donegal Rape Crisis Centre, and highlighting the need for funding of rape crisis centres outside of Dublin. Hi Seán, how are you?
How's it going?
It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
How's your day been, I guess, so far?
Not so bad. Not so bad. Fairly
Perfect.
normal. Normal
That's all you want.
Wednesday morning.
um, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, I guess with the single that you've brought out, but I want to go back a little bit and actually just talk about your own background in music. Um, being raised in Donegal, I kind of assume maybe this is a stereotype that just kind of everyone has some kind of musical, like, is a degree separated from musician. Is that a fair assessment?
I suppose like growing up in that, you know, typical was like my sort of main family wouldn't have been particularly musical, I suppose. But like my granddad, any sort of occasion there would always be a sing song, if that kind of makes
Yeah.
sense. Like sitting in an old man's pub, and next thing it's 10 o'clock and everyone's singing tunes. Like, this is, and that would go on and on and on.
Yes.
That's so it kind of probably started at that typical Irish person, I'd say. Like, it's just kind of grew up with it, and it's just a normal sort of thing. But yeah, so it's kind of nothing too fucking fancy. Um, no proper
No
training or all that,
frills.
but yeah.
What about yourself though? What sort of music did you enjoy kind of like growing up?
Growing up, I sort of was into all sorts of stuff, but I would have like you get kind of pushed to do like the likes of the tin whistle and stuff as a kid, and
Mhm.
some old fella be teaching you the tin whistle and you're thinking, oh God, here we go, you know.
I
But
also I also studied the tin whistle in primary school, so and I
yeah,
don't remember any of it right now. Like if you gave me a tin whistle right now, I would not be able to replicate what I did at 12.
yeah, yeah. I think I could still whack out two tunes on the
Yeah.
tin whistle that I used to play, and that's about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we used to do the Fields of Attenroy. I think that was the one that like our music teacher was like kind of like, okay, just get this one down.
Yeah, so if you can play this, you are sound. You are
Yeah.
absolutely sound. That kind of way.
But I remember
Okay.
my music teacher because I did tin whistle in primary and secondary school. And I remember my secondary
Yeah.
school teacher was a complete show off with tin whistle because I don't know the name of the song offhand, but one of the themes from like the Lord of the Rings films he used to
Oh, right.
do, and I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
oh okay. He didn't teach us it. He was just like, look what I can
He's
do.
like, I can do this, I can do
Yeah.
this. Yeah,
One day maybe you
yeah.
can too.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you how. Like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
going to tell you how. Absolutely not. Yeah, and I suppose then when like I started guitar, like just learning myself when I was
Hmm.
like maybe 12 or 13, and I battered away at that for a while and write tunes in my bedroom, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And never show anyone. I'd be like, no, this is my thing.
Yeah.
And probably my own way of like unpacking my life.
Sure.
Um, but and then I moved on to the ukulele. And rather the ukulele now, it's just easier, nicer wee instrument to play. But yeah, that was well, it's just everything. I just apart from the tin whistle, I just taught myself how to play it, like just figured it out kind of thing.
Were you just like learning chords and trying to come up with songs of your own, or were you trying to replicate like music you were listening to?
Mainly just learning chord. I learned a heap of chords, and then just would be like writing bits of songs. And I have a whole box in my house of not a lot of good lyrics that I wrote from the age of about 13 till 17. And I'm like,
Yeah.
one day bits of that will come in handy. It's not quite yet. I haven't figured it out
You
yet, but
curate it now.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, actually, that's interesting because, like, in a way, it's kind of like, I guess, like documentation of your life. You know, like when you look back at that, like it's actually kind of a
Oh
nice thing to
yeah.
have because, I don't know, like, I don't know how many like 12 to 17-year-olds are like journal keepers necessarily. You know?
No, probably not many. I wouldn't say. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say many.
But do you look
But
at it like that? Like that is kind of like sort of documentation of, I guess, like your own chronology as a person.
mm, yeah, I looked at stuff. I looked at the said box of random pieces of paper about ooh, probably 9 months ago, maybe a year ago,
Hmm.
and I was like, I literally felt sorry for the kid that I used to be. It was as if I was reading like other someone else had wrote some of the
Yeah,
stuff dark. Some of it was dark. Oh my. And then other bits were just you can nearly tell what was going on in my life at that exact time. You know what I mean?
sure.
Just kind of funny. It's as if I have a video camera. You know what I mean? That's what it was like. Looking back at it, it was like could have been watching videos of what was going on.
Well, no, actually, because I think when you have that, it's a weird thing. Like I guess when your adult brain sort of looks back on the stuff you wrote as a child, because I've had that experience too, and you kind of look at it and you're like, oh my God, like you're able to, I guess, sort of have A, the maturity, and B, the kind of detachment to sort of be able to be a bit more objective and you can kind of look at it as if like, this was rather than you, this was like a random 12-year-old who presented this idea to you. And like sometimes like it is like you go, well, that was dark or something. Like you just kind of like, realize like, oh, I didn't know I was harboring that back then.
Yeah, you kind of nearly forget, like, whatever amount of years later,
Yeah,
like 17 years later, and you're thinking, oh my, I was miserable at 12.
yeah,
And it's actually sad to look back at that kid, even though that kid was me. You know what I mean? If
yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think
But
also sometimes like the emotions are sort of complex. Like you kind of look back at it and like I don't know, like I think like a lot of people have this too, where it's like, difficulties in their childhood that they didn't realize were necessarily difficulties at the time, but it's sort of like something you have to then deal with then because it like lingers with you. Like all those kind of impacts kind of still, I don't know, have like little remnants as you grow older. I don't know if you relate to that, but
yeah, no, that makes so much sense. I feel like everyone can probably, if you were to look back, like say if you have videos or like my lyrics, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Look back and think, oh, well, like I know why I wrote that, but looking back now, I probably didn't even realize then the impact it was going to have on my 25, 26, 27, 28 year old self. You know what I mean?
hmm,
Like those
yeah.
things, yeah, as you say, linger on, or that's why I do whatever, that's why I still do that or that, it's kind of a strange one to think about, I suppose.
So when you were writing those lyrics as a kid, I mean, were you uh, kind of influenced by particular artists, or was it kind of just like a sort of free flow, I guess, of emotion that was being expressed? Like, when you're kind of crafting the tunes, were you kind of like inspired by certain artists, or was again just what kind of fit a melody?
Yeah, I think it mostly like what would just fit in the chords I knew at that particular time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, of what I wanted to say. But at this then, I went through like an emo phase, if you want to
Hmm.
call it that. And then it got even more darker. The music got more darker because that was the phase of my life I was going through, I suppose, in regards to music and the songs I listened to or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, yeah, just so I suppose it probably did have its influence of different artists. I couldn't even name one to think of right this second, but you know what I mean.
No, that was an interesting time. The kind of I remember that like the kind of emo scene, I guess, is if you want to call it, and how
Yeah, yeah,
how popular it was, like considering how kind of anti-mainstream a lot of the ideas they were talking about were.
yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely it wasn't. I think there was like a handful of people that would have known any of the songs that in like say the school I went to.
Yeah.
Like, you can nearly pick them out. Who was gonna know the tunes, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because
Well, I think this has hopefully changed since I've been a teenager, but like I remember when I was a teen, like if you wore like a black hoodie or you had long
oh yeah,
hair and all that, you were just like people just slag you off and even threatened to beat you up and stuff like that. You're like, why?
yeah,
It's
yeah, for
like,
sure.
just
Yeah,
different modes of expression.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would hope it is different now. I don't know if it is, but I would hope it is. I hope in school you can sort of do whatever you want, and no
Yeah.
one would. Yeah, it's hard to know though. Kids are kids, I suppose.
Yeah, it's weird because like I don't have kids myself, but like I sometimes I don't know, like I'll be on like a bus and like a school will get out and I'll hear the kids like talking like teenage kids, and to me it doesn't seem like they've really progressed since I've been to
No,
school.
no, probably not. Like, probably
They're
not.
s- they're still as problematic as ever.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that era, I suppose, of their life. They're going to be
Yeah.
problematic.
No,
That's so.
because I always thought like, oh, okay, like as society progresses, the kids will follow too. Doesn't seem to be the case.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, I would
Well,
hope so, but don't think so.
well, I find the youth really. I don't know if like if you're around like in your own life, like around kids and adolescents. But I'm not really. So like I'm sort of seeing it, like detached from like my own personal experience. And one thing that
Yeah,
I find it really complicated to discern where kids are kind of politically and socially because, when I was like a teenager, it was sort of like everyone was kind of like, basically sort of center liberal kind of as a default.
yeah,
Where now it seems like, on the one hand, like kids seem to be getting, like kind of like more interested in left wing ideas and kind of more sympathetic to different identities and to different like backgrounds and to different like nationalities and like caring about social justice and simultaneously also critiquing capitalism and stuff like that. But simultaneously, it seems like there's also this weird right wing shift, and I don't
yeah,
really remember either of those being particularly prominent when I was a kid. So with both of those in sort of tandem, I find it difficult to discern like are the kids of today more progressive than when I was a kid, or are they more regressive? I don't know where they
yeah.
are.
I know. Yeah, I think like there was probably more of a center when I was
Yeah.
a kid, anyways. Whereas now there's nearly a very stark left and right, even in kids, which
Mhm.
is kind of mad, I think.
Yeah.
But I suppose kids follow parents and aunts and uncles and all of that. So if there's a very left right adult, then there's going to be a very left right child as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
sometimes it can actually be the opposite. It's like oh, my dad's like really right wing, I'm going to be left wing, or the
yeah,
opposite
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah. Or they go completely against what the parents or whatever relations are doing, I suppose.
So I want to ask, actually, going back to your music. So, you mentioned like the first song you put out is like very ukulele driven. Um, I was wondering how you got into the uke.
How did I get? I have no idea. I actually think it was because my first ukulele cost me €70, and I thought
Yeah.
this is going to be it. And then I just fell in love with it straight away. I was like, this is unreal.
Yeah.
It's a nice little instrument you can carry it about with you. There's no hassle with it, and it seems like I picked it up quite quick as well. Like I feel like it was. Some people still find it hard, but I felt like it was quite an easy instrument to pick up. Even with the guitar, I felt like it took me forever to get anywhere. But at the same time, I was older when I picked it up, so I mean that kind of makes sense that it would be easier to learn maybe because I had more like I cared about what I was doing sort of thing more maybe. I don't
Hmm.
know. But yeah, and then once I started doing it, that was just doing it. And that was that. I was like, oh, this is the thing I do now. It's the ukulele. Like I haven't generally picked up a guitar probably since.
Oh,
Well, a few
really?
times, not many, not much.
So the ukulele's kind of supplanted the guitar for you.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, that's sort of what
Oh,
happened. Yeah.
I have to ask actually. I remember like trying to learn ukulele, and I play guitar, and when I picked it up, I was like, oh, I have to relearn all the chords. Eh. So was that a difficulty for you, like having to relearn like the chords?
Not particularly because a lot of the chords were actually easier on the ukulele than they were on the guitar. So I was like, oh, it's all right. It could be
Yeah.
worse. You know what I mean? It was annoying at the beginning, very beginning. It was like, oh, now I have to learn even just to play a basic pop tune. Like I have to learn every chord again. But sort of once I picked it up. It was kind of wasn't too much of a hard switch because both string instruments, it was kind of it was
Yeah.
easy enough of a swap, I suppose. But
I'm gonna ask, so, when it came to, I guess, starting this current solo project, was the idea just a vehicle for the song? It's not your fault, or um, did you have aspirations, I guess, of releasing like more music? Like when it came to actually, maybe talk if you could talk a little bit about like um your time actually as an artist, because like have you played in bands before? Have you done solo work before, or is this like brand new territory for you?
Um, I would have done like bits here and there, or like someone would ask me, "Would you play?" They have a gig, and would you play on the gig? Whatever, I would, and that went on for years. So I've been doing that for years. Like I play a lot of tunes, or someone would have a gig and I'll give you 20 quid if you play
Sure.
for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? And I'm like, absolutely not a bother. You know what I
A
mean?
euro a minute.
Yeah, yeah. Do something silly like whatever. I just, or I'll buy you pints for the night. That was the main thing at the time. Like I was like,
Yeah.
I'll buy you pints if you'll play whatever. And I'm like, yep.
It's a point economy in the live music scene.
Yeah, yeah, basically yeah, that's what it was like. Yeah. Um, but as so much as like solo stuff, not a lot, just me. You know what I mean? This single, it's kind of funny because like I had no expectation. I still don't have any expectation of the single, but once it actually went out, then I was like, okay, now this is what I'm gonna do. I was looking back at like my catalog of stuff that I have in the last few years, and I was like, I've got so many tunes, I could get ready to bang them out. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah,
and I'm definitely gonna look into more sort of gigging and that as well. Um, but I think the song's message itself was probably the best one to put out to begin with, to start, I think.
mhm.
Um, just I think I needed to put it out more than someone else might need to hear it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was that? I guess that process like in terms of like going, okay, I'm going to start this solo project. Obviously, you're working with Ross Tones and on this, and the Donegal music scene is like really fantastic at the moment. It's really getting a lot of traction, and I was wondering about that. I was wondering like, um, well, it seems like based on your previous answer that like you did have like connections within the Donegal music scene. So I was wondering like how it kind of came about that like you have this song that you want to like record and release. What's the timeline, I guess, from kind of making that decision that I'm going to put this out to where we are now?
It's actually a funny one because I literally met Ross a couple of years ago at an art exhibition of a friend, a mutual friend that we both had. I didn't know him at all, and someone said, "You got your ukulele with you?" to me, and he was like, you play music." Friendship
You're like, I never
began.
leave the house without
Yeah, yeah.
it.
Friendship began, and then within probably I don't know, a lot of months later, he was like, "Should come and we'll record something." And it wasn't
Yeah.
this tune, actually, it was something else. And then we recorded this one. Um, so it was just right time, right place. That's literally, he is a sound fella, and it just literally was right time, right place. That's sort of where it began. I had never sort of, well, maybe I did when I was younger, but in recent times, I never had sort of a plan to make music a thing. You know what I mean? I just sort of made it. But when we kind of became friends, it was like, oh, maybe I can actually put this out. I can
Yeah.
actually do this. So that was sort of how it started, I suppose. Um,
Well, it's like a very interesting sound because, obviously it means dealing with very, like I might be sensitive about this, so like, however much you want to talk about is your prerogative, but like, the subject matter is obviously it's obviously very strong, but it's sort of, you're dealing with heavy subject matter, but you're also, it's a very hopeful song, like it seems like a very reassuring song. That's how I felt about it, like, the intent was good when you're kind of, I guess dealing with this kind of subject matter. I mean, do you have consideration for those sensitivities? I imagine so.
yeah, it's like when I wrote the song, I needed to hear those words coming out of my own mouth, like when I was
Mm.
literally writing the song. Like I can literally remember sitting in my sitting room. The dog was asleep on the couch. probably annoyed at me because I was playing the ukulele for hours. And the moment where I went, it's not my fault that I ended up ending the song on, was like the moment I realized that, events in my life weren't my fault, you know what I mean? And then when I sat with that for long enough and then brought it to Ross, he was like, so other people need to hear this. And I was like, I know other people need to hear this, but I don't know what I don't know what to do with it. You know what I mean? And I'm glad now that I have put it into the world and I have sort of spoke about why I wrote it. And, I got assaulted years ago and, I didn't talk about nothing. Like I just didn't say anything to anyone. It was 7 years before I even said to one person what had happened. And, you know, I feel sorry for that person as well. That person that is me or was me, you
Mm.
know what I mean? Because it just took me down, put me into awful sort of headspaces. And, I drank a lot, I used a lot of drugs. And that's just like, I didn't think anything of myself. And I would hate now to think that there's someone else sitting on something that's that horrific and traumatic and it's just eating them up and eating them up and eating them up. And it's not their fault either. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and maybe even like I even got messages since the song's been out of people saying, "You literally made me believe that it actually isn't my fault what happened to me." And I'm like, "That's all I wanted. That is all I
Yeah.
wanted from the song." You know what I mean? So it's I feel like there's not there's Ireland has come a long way in that hush hush thing. It's not to the extent it was, but it's still not great. People don't talk about stuff and things get swept under carpets. And you know, if the song can even for a couple of people just make them speak up about something that's literally destroying them inside, like you know what I mean, and because it did to me, you know what I mean. Like I
Hmm.
went down a terrible path because of not even. I mean, I might end up down that path anyways, in regards to the drink or the drugs or that, but it did not. It was, I think, if I'd have spoke about it earlier, then it might have been a very different scenario. But I wouldn't have the
Sure.
song to release. So, you know, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of a, as you say, like a. I hope it gives people a bit of hope rather than sort of focusing on the actual negative of it. You know what I mean? Which I
Yeah.
think that's sort of what happened, or what is happening.
We said something interesting there, which was that, like, it seems like, I guess, more acceptable to discuss these things now. But a complex feeling I have about it is like, a lot of times for people to kind of, I don't know, demonstrate. I want to be careful how I phrase this, but like to demonstrate the severity that sexual assault can have on a person, they have to, it almost seems like they have to kind of reveal personal details to them that maybe they're, still processing. And it seems like that's very unfair. I mean, it seems like you shouldn't have to rely on first person, tell your story to the public in order for people to get it, so to speak. Um, do you think that, like, I don't know, that like survivors are sort of are in a position now where they can speak about that stuff, or do you still think there's like a lot of judgment and harassment? Because you look at some like court cases now, especially if it features like a famous person. I'll be vague
Mm.
about that, and it seems like there's this like weird like backlash and this weird shaming that seems like evil to me.
It, like I don't know, I'm trying to sort of. I feel like the sort of culture of the likes of like sexual assault survivors, whatever, is probably shifting. But
Yeah.
when I think about it at the same time, it took me 7 years to say it to one person, and that was shame, and that was guilt, me thinking it was my fault. And that's only in the 20 teens. You know what I mean? That's not that
Yeah.
long ago if you think about it. So has it really changed that much? Probably not. There still is a shame and making people feel guilty for something that is clearly not them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know, will that ever change? I just don't know. I hope it does. I hope it keeps swinging a wee bit towards the right side it should be at. You know what I mean? Where like,
Yeah.
it's not. There shouldn't be a sense of shame on in anyone. Like like it's kind of mad when I think about it. Like there's not a person that I know that hasn't been affected by this, either directly or indirectly, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And you think, why isn't it spoke about more? And I think that was probably why, like, I put posts up and like sort of told my that it's like why the song was written and different things, because I felt like I owed it to myself to be like, no, this, like, I don't feel shame or guilt for this anymore. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
wasn't, and then I thought, well, inevitably this will help someone else because they're probably in that same boat. But you're definitely right. I think that there still is, like, it's hard to, like, know. It's hard to know if it's still to the same extent. Probably not, but it would still be, a fairly taboo topic that people would. I don't know. It's hard to know, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering, like, how do you have any kind of ideas of like, what we could potentially do to like change that? Like, I thought, for example, that you know consent and talking about like sexual assault and being quite earnest and like quite open about it in terms of like sexual education in school, in terms of just like broader like social CSP kind of level. I don't know. They changed the names since I was in school, but when I was in
Yeah,
school, it
I
was
don't
called
know either. I don't know
CSP.
what they're called. Yeah,
But when I was in well, whatever like whatever the social sciences are now in secondary schools, I think like these things need to be kind of like combated quite directly and not in this sort of I don't know, not in a sort of way that leaves any line of ambiguity.
yeah. I feel like people are scared to talk about things. Like, even if you take teachers or whatever, like maybe the
Yeah,
education system as a whole. But it's better for kids to know than to learn the hard way, basically. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I don't know what it's like now. I hope it's also better in schools, but in regards to like
yeah,
sex education or that. But
yeah.
like we got the most minimal sex education. You know what I mean? Like it was one class in the
It was like a
entirety of my
biology
schooling.
lesson, I remember.
Yeah, it was like a biology lesson. That's exactly it. So I hope it's better than that. But I think, and this is a wee bit controversial, but it's not. But it just, some people don't like it. But I think earlier the better. And like obviously, you talk to smaller kids in a very, like
Yeah,
you said the word consent. Like me and my friend were talking the last day. And she was like, I've taught my, he's now going to be 5, but like consent. If you don't want to hug someone, you don't hug them.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
just like it's that easy. You go by age level, and then it gets,
yeah.
you get older.
Absolutely.
But then I suppose, even if something, even to teach, like, say, teenagers where to go if something does happen.
Yeah, that's an
You know what I
important
mean?
thing. Yeah.
Because I hadn't a clue. Like, I didn't know, apart from the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, and clearly
Hmm.
I don't live in Dublin. I didn't know it was like there was ones all over the place.
Yeah,
I hadn't a clue. You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like in schools they should be like, okay, I like, not obviously when they're older, like, no, teenagers, but like, if something like this were ever to happen, or even, I don't know if it's still going, but there was that Ask Angela thing that went.
hmm.
Is that still? I think it's. I
I
would have
think it's still in
probably.
effect. It's certainly what I used to work in live events, and it was at the time, but it was
Yeah,
only like 2 or 3 years ago.
yeah, it was only a few years ago. Yeah, so I was thinking, like, even to tell that to like later teenagers,
Yeah,
like these things are in place, but people don't know. And then I don't know. It's like I hadn't a clue. Like I didn't know at all. Like I was also living in England when it actually happened, and it was on my own. But like I could have rang home, but I didn't.
yeah,
It was that shame. I didn't tell no one. But I feel like even if I were to have been here, I still probably wouldn't have, and didn't have the information.
yeah,
Because I didn't know. If you don't know, you
yeah.
can't do anything about it. You know.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things, I forget where it was. I think it may have been in Canada, perhaps Canada, but there was some kind of backlash of some school that was teaching, and here's a controversial idea, right? They were teaching that boys can be sexually assaulted too, and that
Yeah.
was like apparently causing uproar or something. I can't like I'm probably getting some details wrong, but like I
Yeah.
was like, why is that controversial? Why is it
Yeah. It's not
controversial to say
controversial at
that
all.
like
Yeah.
we're all potential. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know,
everyone's
like to teach
essentially.
kids about it, but I think people just have a sort of uncomfortable. It's not necessarily just sexual assault, but I think that's themed. Like, I think this is like kind of a chaste attitude that we still persist with. Is that like anything to do with sex is sort of um
Like dirty or something.
forbidden? Well, not for kids, you know. It's
Yeah,
like I don't know. It's like, but I do agree there is way like as you mentioned with your friend there teaching your 5-year-old, her 5-year-old about um you know, like if you don't want to hug someone, like that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, consent can be
just say no, it's okay. I don't want to hug
integrated.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, progressively, you know, and
Yeah,
you know, it's like it's something that I think people of all ages need to know, you know, and not feel ashamed, as you were mentioning too.
oh yeah, 100%. It's
Yeah.
it's always like age tailored information that you give people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're obviously not going to traumatize a 5-year-old. Like you know what I mean?
No,
But like
absolutely. But it's like, you know, how you don't teach in history class in primary school, you don't teach kids about like World War II straight away.
no, no, yeah, it's the same thing. Like you just
Yeah,
don't because you're like, oh, it's a bit that's sketchy of the topic for like 7
sure.
year olds.
Yeah.
You know?
I
Yeah,
also want to ask, so if I'm correct, like I believe the proceeds from the single are going to a rape crisis center in Donegal. Maybe if you want to just talk about that.
yeah. So highly unlikely that I'll make much money now, but I
Mm.
do want to put a good chunk of it anyways. It might end up being all of it because there might be no money come to me, but
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm hoping to do a few different things to raise money alongside the song because it's like I feel like this could be a wee bit controversial, depends who listens, but sure look. I feel like, and I actually know, it's not that I feel like I know that the majority of funding goes to the Dublin Crisis Centre, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And therefore the ones on the west are probably the worst um funded. So if my 10-year-old that I might make on this tune can go to them, then there you go. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm hoping it'll make more than 10-year-old, but you just don't know. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would because like I rocked up to them an absolute broken person.
Yeah.
I couldn't even speak to the woman. I couldn't even speak to the woman. And there was never a like set amount of sessions. You know the way you go to some organizations and it's a you have 6 sessions, and if you don't have it sorted in 6 sessions, then you're done
Yeah.
for. Like,
Yeah,
there
which I
was
hate because you
never
always
a
have that pressure then be like, oh my God, I'm on my third one, you know?
yeah, yeah, literally, yeah. There
Like
was
I don't feel
never
much
a
better.
like, there's a time frame on this.
Yeah.
It was just whenever you're ready to finish, you tell me. You know what I mean?
Which is, I think, the perfect attitude to have to with dealing with people who have trauma in any way, you know, is
Oh yeah.
not putting that time restraint on them and saying, well, you know, even telling them like, well, most of my clients are done after 2 months. Like, don't say that. Just like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
everyone's different.
yeah, because it's mad because like I had spent years of not saying anything to anyone, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then to go there and be like knowing that it wasn't going to be like pushed, like nothing was going to be pushed. There was days I would have just had a rant about something because I couldn't even go to, like, I must have been there a couple of months before I even went to the reason I was there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I just couldn't. I was so closed off to everything. I'm still quite a closed off person, which you wouldn't probably believe. But like compared to what I was, like I didn't. It wouldn't matter what would have happened, good, bad, or indifferent. No one was
Yeah.
finding out about stuff. Nobody knew who I was really at all. But there was never any pressure by that. So yeah, literally, I owe a lot to the Donegal branch of the Rape Crisis Centre. Like, geez, I don't know. I wouldn't be alive. Honestly, I wouldn't be alive if I hadn't have done it. I hadn't have gone to speak to them.
Well, I'm
So I'm
glad you
really
did then.
grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, no, it's something I wanted to ask because I actually don't know this offhand. So maybe if you know, great. But if you don't, like, but like, I was actually wondering about that because you were kind of mentioned that like a lot of the proceeds would go to the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, which you know is definitely the most prominent one. So, are the rape crisis centres in Ireland, are they like regional, like in terms of like are they acting autonomously, or are they just like different branches of the
I think
same?
I'm not 100% sure, but I do think they're just different branches of the same. Um, and therefore, I know, I understand, like, there's more people in Dublin and stuff, but then that
Hmm.
leaves certain
No,
ones
absolutely.
in rural areas that still have the same level of sexual violence happening, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then they've not got as much, funds going to them. Like, it doesn't funnel out well to, the likes of ones that are outside cities, basically, I suppose.
yeah,
Like, so I'm sure there's loads of them. I can't even name other ones, but there's ones all over the place. And the more rural ones are just going to get less money and therefore can take less clients on. And there, it's all a
yeah,
longer wait time then, will end up being a thing. And, so it's kind of, it's nice to sort of say that, well, I don't know if it's going to work out. I would like that the funding goes to the Donegal branch, but
yeah,
is that going to work out? I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. Will it just go to the main and then it gets spread around again? I don't
sure.
know how it works, but I would like to think that it would go to the Donegal branch, knowing that that's the one I use, first of all. Second of all, I know that the rural branches get less money allocated, like say by the government funding or whatever.
Yeah,
So, I feel like it would help the likes of that one more than it would, you know, Dublin, where they're probably getting a lot more funding. I don't think there's enough funding that goes into it in general,
yeah.
but
The lion's share of the fund goes to Dublin. I understand.
yeah.
No, I think that's a very important thing to highlight, actually. Yeah, no, because like those resources are like vital nationwide, and it shouldn't just be, Dublin or Cork or the big cities. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know like what the remedy to that is, but I do think like speaking of it, it is very important. I don't know like but I think like it's all resource management that's part of a bigger issue, I guess, like
Yeah.
in
Don't
terms of
think don't
like
think we're solving that issue, like.
exactly, man. Like that's and it's really unfair. Like, and I speak as someone from Dublin. Like, I think that's unfair too. Like, like that some people like, for example, don't even like have to go like 20 kilometers to get to their nearest hospital or something. Even more probably like have to go out of county sometimes to get to their nearest hospital. Which like
Yeah.
I don't know. I
My nearest
wish.
hospital's in Sligo, so it takes me an
Yeah.
hour and a half to get there.
Exactly, exactly.
You know
It's
what I
like
mean?
I just think that's absurd. Like, what if you have a
Yeah.
heart attack?
You're like, that's just mental.
I actually knew I knew a guy who lived in rural Wicklow. I forget the name of the area, but I asked him about that. I was like, what would happen if like someone just had a heart attack at like 1 in the morning, had to wait for an ambulance, and he was like, something like that actually did happen, and the person did die. I'm like, well, that's not reassuring. Something like that happened
Yeah.
like in its thing, and it's like, oh god.
You're like, oh, you get to Sligo in a helicopter in 12 minutes
Yes.
from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
normally if it's something big, helicopter lands on the GA pitch that's just over the road.
That's the hell. That's the HSE.
There you go. Like, we need to get a helicopter because we can't drive. It's too far. Far too
We should
far.
put more funding into helicopters
Absolutely.
and getting more
Absolutely.
helicopter licenses. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect, Sean. I just want to ask actually, what's your kind of like future plans? So at the moment, it seems to me from like talking to you that like, you're kind of like taking it as it comes. You're thinking like, oh, maybe I'll do some shows and I'd like to do this. But like you mentioned that like you and Ross have like a kind of backlog of songs. So do you plan on kind of like releasing them as they go or?
Um, so I have a multitude of songs written and about half I've probably about 15 songs, like 90% done, and it'll end
Mhm.
up probably being five. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like, you pick out bits and then you're like, oh no. But nothing is, oh, maybe one other thing is actually recorded. But yeah, I'm hoping that'll be, if Russell, if Russell keep me, that we'll get more recording done, hopefully, in the nearer future, I would say, because once I'm in something, I'm doing it. So I can't. If I take a break, I'm done for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I gotta
I'm the
just go
same.
with it
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Sean. It was lovely chatting with you. Is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up and I failed to cover?
So I don't think so. I don't think there's anything you failed to cover. Um, Definitely, just I would just say to people to just in regards to the crisis centers and just speak about up about stuff. That was literally all I'd say to end it. Like it's just don't let it sit in your head, because it's probably the most dangerous place for things to sit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, if you
So
can,
yeah,
donate to your local branch
yes, and
if you
yes,
have
if
the
you
means.
can, absolutely donate to your local branch of the Rape Crisis Centre, because they do some amazing work. So yeah, that is.
Thanks very much for your time, Sean. It was lovely chatting with you,
Thank you
and
very much. It was
enjoy
nice
the
to chat
rest
to
of your
you.
day.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to that episode of Post-Burnout.com interviews. We're available wherever you get your podcasts, so we hope that you enjoyed and would consider subscribing, giving it a like on YouTube, or a rating anywhere else. We also have some exclusive episodes only available on Spotify, which features interviews with the likes of Kim Deal, Ron Mail of Sparks, Jacob Slater of Wonder Horse, Maria Kelly, Gavin Friday, and many more. So check those out if you're so inclined. Otherwise, thank you for listening and see you next time.